Hello, everybody. We are here again for another wonderful episode of the Exit Interview, episode 10. Asia, how are you?
I am in disbelief that we're on episode 10, actually.
It goes fast.
It does go fast. No wonder you two have been able to do so many episodes because it just flies by.
Yeah, it does go fast. But, I think tonight's episode is going to be, I think, a really good episode. I think it's going to be enlightening for a lot of reasons. Our guest is somebody who's dear to me, somebody who I look up to and admire as an educator. And it's, it's like a double-edged sword because this is a person who there goes our Franz, our other guest. We were talking about the parakeet. Asia,
I'm trying to be on mute because I'm ready for him to start singing.
That's right. That's right.
I mean, it's a community effort, right?
That's right.
So Franz is a part of it. The parakeet's a part of it. The producer
and our producer Gerardo makes an appearance.
Yeah, and I want to also echo my love for Michael and also to shout out to Franz, who gives shout outs on the podcast.
That's right. That's right. But like I said, a double-edged sword with this one because it's an interview that I'm glad that we have, but it also means, that this brother is leaving the classroom, and so I'm thrilled that we have this guest today, but I hope that really the powers that be that listen to this podcast are really hearing what is being said in the experiences, because like you to quote Jay-Z, you lost one. You lost one. You know what I mean? And so I think that's what we're going to document today. And so, I am glad we are here. We are here with the eminent, the great, the wonderful Michael Diaz-Rivera. Michael, go ahead and tell the people what's up. Yes.
But no, I'm excited to be here. Excited to be in conversation with some of my favorite people. Y'all inspire me, have inspired me, and still will. So I'm just excited to talk, conversate with the fam, and share my story. And yeah, you're right. It's a bittersweet area that I'm feeling currently, trying to admit to myself that I'm leaving the classroom. I've been able to admit it yet. Yeah.
Well, we appreciate it. The feeling is mutual, I think, from all of us. And just appreciate you being here and willing to share your story, because we know how much this means to you, and we know just how traumatic some of these stories can be.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep. Yeah. I was just thinking of racial battle fatigue as I was just getting ready to start. And I was just thinking of which example should I share today. In my years of school, I've been in some battles. Sometimes I think that I fought battles that didn't need to be fought, but there have been a lot of racial battles that
I love that thought about, because that is the question. You always, I think, as Black educators, we're always asking, what is my battle? And I think some people would always be like, oh, you're fighting everything. And you're like, I'm not really fighting everything, because there's a bunch of stuff where I don't say something, where I feel like I could have said something, and so that's why I'm excited to have you here. And I think our listeners are really going to get a lot of this episode. So Asia, you want to start us off with our first question?
Yeah, of course. So we always have those same kind of 5 questions, and we're onto that storytelling. And so start us off, and how did you end up going into education? How did you end up being a teacher?
Yeah, I actually started teaching. Actually, it was the inspiration of Trayvon Martin being murdered, Michael Brown being murdered, that actually brought me to education. I was in college around that time, and I was originally planning to be a psychology major, art minor, and I wanted to do art therapy. And so as I was in my studies, these Black men were being murdered, and there was no answer for it. And then people started talking about it, though. And in those conversations, they started talking about education of our Black kids and what is happening to our Black boys. Well, and then I, at the same time, had read an article about the need for Black male educators in education, that there, a lot of times we are few and far between. I don't even know if that's the right statement, but it's hard to find Black male educators, especially in elementary school. So I was lucky enough to get into a program, and actually I was talking about battles. I was trained to teach by some of the people that I am in battle with now. Some of the many people that I consider my opposition were what brought me to teaching. I came to education through an alternative teaching licensure because I had already graduated college. There's opportunities for people that that have other career fields. They've got a college degree, other ways for them to get into education. I think it has something to do with the teacher shortage. It could also be with union busting. There's a lot of stuff happening even with alternative teaching licensure. But that's how I got in. And I quickly realized that these places weren't the place for me, because it wasn't set up for me to support the people that I came into education for. Like I said, I came into education for the Black and brown babies. And from the very first months in my first school, I realized that the system wasn't created for that to happen. And even, just thinking what you were saying, Kevin, about not wanting to be the angry Black man and trying to choose my battles. I know y'all know that feeling of you see stuff happening and you wonder, is it worth me speaking up about this? Is it going to change anything? Or am I going to be looked at as the angry Black man? Problem is, I don't know how to shut up. So
but the more I realize, I feel like if we share our opinions, we always going to be viewed as the angry Black man.
Right.
You know, or the angry Black woman. I mean, Asia, you know, the angry Black woman is like that.
Yeah. And I appreciate, sorry to cut you off, Kevin.
Go ahead.
I appreciate, you saying like trying to pick those battles and decide what to do and all. And it's really hard. And you just said, I appreciate the reflection. Like some of those, was it really even, was that just me? Like all those circles, and then coming back to this place of like, wow, it's a full circle thing.
Yeah.
Right. Now I'm fighting battles against folks who I thought were in my corner, in the corner of the Black and brown children that you are still supporting and we're trying to support at the time. Yeah. So like, tell us about, I mean, you kind of got into it already, started getting into it. So you're still coming to the grips that you're not in teaching, at least not in the ways that you originally started in the beginning. What was the straw? How did your time in the classroom end? How did you lead up to going into what you are going to do or what you're doing right now?
Yeah. So what my final straw actually probably happened a year ago. I remember this time a year ago thinking, where was I going to teach the next year? I was still signed on to the contract at the school that I was at, but I knew that the leadership at the school really wasn't fans. They weren't fans of me. They were not trying to work together and be restorative in the harm that we've both caused each other. So it was last year figuring out what was I going to do. And I realized that no matter what school I went to, it was probably going to be the same issues. There were still going to be educators that are blessed to work with our kids that refuse to do right by our kids. And I say that in thinking of the race aspect of these folks know about the achievement gap. They know what the consequences are for our kids when they're not learning. And there has not been any real changes yet to make our kids succeed. So at my school last year, John M. S. Elementary is where I was at. And I knew before the year that it was going to be a tough one, but I didn't want to go to a new school and start with a new group of students that I would have to rebuild relationships when I already knew my kids that I was with. So I decided to just, battles weren't a new thing to me. So I figured just get ready, protect myself, build with those that I can, and we'll see if they take me out, I'm going to go out swinging, was really my thinking. And really, so I knew that the end for me in education was on its way, but I'm still not admitting to myself that the classroom right now isn't the place for me. And I think the decision that made it for me was my principal and my school leadership choosing to early non-renew me this year, a month before school ended. It was a real political trick, but once that happened, I'm interviewing my principals, not giving me a good reference. I'm just burnt out. And so I feel like I'm rambling, but really just the burnout that I've experienced from the last couple years of fighting has led me to this point, realizing that this isn't sustainable for somebody like me.
Yeah.
Unless I change some things. And actually, I was going to say, when you were talking earlier, Kev, about just being the angry Black man, James Baldwin has that quote of being Black and educated. Actually, no, I'm going to mess up the quote, but I'm living with a constant rage is what I'm
That's right. That's right. All the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah. To be Black in America and to not be for something perpetually angry, it's like you have to be.
All the time.
Like that.
All the time.
Yeah.
No. But I love that point, Michael, that it's like, because I feel like in our experience of, doing these exit interviews and just our experience as Black educators, I feel like that's always what the issue is. It's like you go into these rooms and you feel like you have to do something. And I don't know about your experience, but like from early on, it was like, I have to say something, because I'd look around the room and there was less. I was like, there is nobody. Early on when I came in my orientation meeting, there was nobody like me. I was like, I'm very different. I could sense it, right off the bat. But I want to go back, Michael, for a minute and just talk about a little bit about your classroom and just that you're a Black educator, and I think there's this trend of Black educators kind of going in it to approach it one way. So, and then also the pushback, like you said, that people not willing to change. But can you tell us a little bit about like what your classroom is like and what, some of the stuff that you were doing, to really, because I think that as a person who knows your pedagogical practices, I that's what I love about you, especially at the elementary level as a Black man. But just tell us a little bit about some of the practices that you engage in your classroom.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that for me is it's hard for me to admit that I'm giving that up.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like, and I could say I feel like it, but my students and my family support my thinking.
Mm-hmm.
My classroom was a place where my kids felt valued. My classroom was where oppressive practices were not allowed. From me, from other folks, from students, any of that. Like I said, I came into education when Black Lives Matter movement was just kicking off. So I started out as an abolitionist educator without even really knowing what that's about, but knowing that these systems weren't working for my kid. So I would go, and actually I started at a school, University Prep, which a lot of my parents at the time when I was at that school, they called the school a military public school for the way that we would treat our kids.
Yes.
So in the hallway, they've got kids walking on lines, hugs and bubbles, don't do anything outside of what you would expect a robot to do. And then when they come in my classroom, I'm telling my kids rules are made to be broken.
That's right.
I'm telling my kids that they should question me of all people. Don't let me just tell them anything. And I teach my kids restorative practices. When we're getting into those moments where conflict is happening, I was able to stop my class in that moment, address it as the whole class, and really get to the issue. Now, I won't say that I was always able to get there, because restorative conversations, involve a lot of conversation and a lot of time that I wasn't given because of the system. But in my classroom, I was able to create a culture that I didn't see many other places, a community where I didn't see many other places. I don't know who I stole it from, but I called my students family because I learned my love of education from my family. If it wasn't for my mom holding that high bar of me when I wanted to be a knucklehead, I would not be where I am today. Mm-hmm. So that's why I hold that high bar in my classroom. And I've noticed something, me being a knucklehead growing up is I'm a magnet for knuckleheads now. For some reason, it might not be hard to guess, but I've noticed that school admin tends to put the knuckleheads in my room because I'm able to break through to them in ways others won't even try. And yes.
So then what is what we're hearing sounds fantastic. And of course, I'm not an administrator, but to me, I'm like, that's awesome. That's great.
That's what I want for my children. That's the environment I want for my children.
Yeah. So then what's the problem? What was the rub between you and the administration that got you into a place in this where we're talking to you today? What was the problem?
My refusal to assimilate is probably it. And even at the last school I just left, John M.S. Elementary, they recruited me because of who I am, because of the values that I have and what I stand in for in community, my past teaching experiences. But once I got there, they thought that they could put me in a box. They thought that I could just be a token. They could call me when it's time to take a photo op. They could call me when it's time to discipline kids. But for the real issues, I was just supposed to be quiet. So when I see students being put into submission holds, and I'm calling it out, it's a problem for school leadership. When I see my kids being interrogated by the police without talking to their parents, and then I'm talking to the parents without talking to leadership.
And this is it. Hold on. Elementary
school. Exactly. When I'm talking about the fact that our PDs are not productive and they're not making us better teachers, they're just checking boxes, and I'm giving solutions on how we could do better, is just ignored to the point where I'm literally, I either choose to be silent all the time or I speak up because I know that they're going to look at me as the angry Black man and somebody has to say it.
Like, whatever. That's what I'm going to be. If I'm going to be angry Black man, I guess that's my character in this show.
Exactly.
Yeah, thank you. I did want to go back to one thing that you said about, like, you realize that, like, no matter what school you went to, that it would be the same, like you would run into the same issues and the same problems. And I think just kind of sharing a tad bit of like I can totally hear that. I totally understand that. I've had that same experience when I realized, like, in the same, like, I was in CCSD in Cherry Creek School District. No matter where I went, my reputation as being angry, as being like basically able to get students to stand up for themselves would follow me, and I wouldn't be able to find work, or I'd have to water myself down for them, and I couldn't do that. So I totally hear what you're saying about, like, no matter where you go, it's gonna be the same.
Yeah, and that's the tough part, because like I said, my heart is still in it. I still feel like I'm a good teacher, and it's hard for me to step away from that to the point where last Friday, someone called me because someone at their school had quit and there were interview positions. So yesterday I had an interview for a job. The whole time preparing for the interview, I knew my heart wasn't in it. And I'm just like, I've got the interview, so let me just try it. But I'm not going to be quiet about what's happened. And then this morning I got a call from the people that I interviewed with that said that they didn't choose me for the position, which I'm hoping that it was because the other person was more qualified than me. But I'm willing to bet it's because of the things that I spoke out on, because of the fact that I spoke in that interview about the need for true restorative practices and that I haven't seen it in schools those type of things probably make school admin scared, but I cannot crush myself to make these other people feel powerful.
No, and I think, in our district, because we work in the same district, we our district has claimed to, as one of its top 6 priorities to challenge historical oppression, right? And so, like, what you talk about is these aspects of oppression that have gone on systematically, right? That you're facing. It's like blackballing a teacher, basically, right? Like you have the red A on you. You have been labeled, this. But I want to ask you, and you could tell me where you want to go. This is one of the questions that Asia sent you. But me and you, we are acquainted through some union work, and just your thoughts about the union and the role of the union in kind of your situation and place Black teachers.
Yeah.
Or educators.
I value union. I love the union for what it's supposed to be. But my experience this year, in the last couple of years of teaching, the Denver Classroom Teachers Association has not supported me in the way that they should have. And like I said, I knew the battles that were going to be happening this year because of what I went through with my principal last year. I had the same principal, same leadership this year. So I was just preparing myself. Before I went into the year, actually, because we had grievances last year, the union was supposed to support me. And oftentimes I felt like they failed me. But going into this year, I made sure to come up with a plan with the union. We know what I'm stepping into. How can we make sure that I'm supported all times? And it's a really political game at the end of the day, because the union plays politics. The union is only going to support you if it is something that's going to make them look good, in my opinion, if it's going to benefit them. If the union can't call the district out for being racist without being accountable for their own racism, it's going to be an issue. So that's where my relationship with DCTA was tarnished this year, because they weren't showing up for me when I needed them most. And I think it was because of the fact that I had called them out in the past. Literally, my first week, we didn't even have kids yet. First week of orientation this year, my principal asked me for a meeting, which I still don't really even know what the meeting was about.
Yeah.
But she just really wanted to be authoritative and say, like, Michael, I want you to know what the principal says goes. And
I'm setting the agenda for this year. I'm in charge.
Yes. Are you going to listen when I ask you to do things that I was already doing?
Yes.
But they just wanted to try to create a narrative. And as they continued to create this narrative this year, the union didn't really do what they needed to support me, which there are many factors to it. I'm at an innovation school, which in a way I waved away a couple of my rights, which is a big problem that I try to caution teachers away from now. So many of the things that the union could have supported me on, maybe they wanted to support me on, they couldn't because of the whites that I waved away. But even in sitting in meetings and supporting me in the time of those meetings, the union wasn't there. Literally, the last week of me teaching, my principal started to rearrange my meetings and really have some off behavior. I shared the meetings with the union like I always would, asked them to be there to support me. And when it was time, the union was nowhere to be found. So, I believe in the union. I know the union is the power of the people. And that's why I still fight for the union. But the way that the union is currently standing, it's not beneficial for me and other educators like me.
Idealism versus reality, right? We have ideals, but how it plays out is always interesting.
Yeah, you weren't the first person who talks about unions, and we've had interviews from folks all over the country now who've either not joined the union because of they felt like they were too close to the school district, that they were like really working together, or they reached out to the union and did not receive support, or the union didn't believe that racism existed in the district. So it's like a very common thing that we hear over and over again with the union. Like, yeah, people understand that the union is necessary and it's a good thing and we should support the union. And at the same time, there's a lot of things that the union needs to work on that a lot of them haven't come to terms with. A lot of the union leadership and folks have not come to terms with.
Exactly. It's 2021. The stuff that is affecting our community has been affecting us for the longest. So for them to act like they don't know, like this is all new to them, is just gaslighting.
Yep.
Really.
Yep.
And like I said, I called the union out for their historical racist practices this year. Their best response was an optional racism class with teachers. And then, so I went to the class just to see what it was.
Yes, yeah.
And it wasn't anti-racism. If anything, it was make a racist comfortable class.
Say that again, Mike.
Yeah.
Say that again.
Racist comfortable class. It really just gives racists the language to say that they're not racist without really asking for any action.
That's right.
And that was
interesting.
I really like that point, and you made this point about the professional development too, that you've gone through. But I think this is the experience that does lead to the racial bad, because like, even when you're supposed to be learning, you're like, I'm supposed to be learning something that's going to help me be a better teacher. You end up, and I've sat in professional developments where it's like, we have to explain to the person leading the professional development why what they're doing is completely wrong.
Yeah, and harmful.
And I'm like, yeah, I might be getting paid for this, but I'm not getting paid like that to explain to you how you need to revamp your class and do it differently. So I think that's a really important point.
How many of us have been that person of color in a class when the racism subject comes up and then everyone looks at you to be the expert? That is still happening to our adults. Like,
yeah,
folks, I'm out here suffering racial battle fatigue. I teach y'all. Like you said, y'all ain't even paying me. I'm trying to heal.
Yeah, no, exactly. I'm trying to heal. I love that.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's the truth. That is the truth.
Yeah. I think this might be a good time for a break. And then we'll come back and ask some more questions. What you thinking, Kev? Yes.
I mean, I think we got to get to the official last straw. Did we get to the last straw? Like the breaking point, if you want to go into it. And then like, how are you? Because like, I will tell you, Michael, you have an educator's heart. So I want to hear how you're continuing to work to educate the community and build those bonds and relationships and all the stuff you're doing. So yeah, stay tuned, folks. We got more with Michael Diaz-Rivera.
Let's talk to y'all soon.
Listener, if you've made it this far into the episode, perhaps you are enjoying this remix conversation about power, culture, and education. And if that's the case, please consider joining others like you, educators, community leaders, activists, scholars, artists, and youth by supporting the Two Dope Teachers and a Mic podcast and productions on Patreon. For as little as $5 a month, you can get on-air shout-outs, sneak previews, and early released episodes, insider information on the happenings in Two Dope Nations, and many other small benefits. The greatest benefit, though, is you enable us to keep bringing the fire. Because of people like you, we have expanded to 2 podcasts, with the Exit interview taking flight and forcing hard conversations about attacks on Black educators. And we've added new features, including episode transcripts and a revamped website, all because of listeners like you. But that's just the beginning. Your support will open up new possibilities for us and for the communities we represent and advocate for. And at the $15 per month level, you receive a sticker. Yes, folks, a sticker. To support the podcast, head over to patreon.com/2dopeteachers. That's patreon.com/2dopeteachers.
All right, so we're back, and so we're coming back from the break, really asking a few questions. But that first question, you kind of hinted to it already, Michael, that you were non-renewed early in the school year, like a month early before school ended. So if you feel comfortable, can you share the story of like what happened in that situation?
Yeah, and I'll actually start by telling a little bit of the story of the year. Yeah. So like I said, the year started the first week of orientation. My principal pulled me into a meeting to just like have a power struggle, let me know who had the power, which she's a leader. It's okay. I can follow the leader. But then probably the next day in PD, we were talking about, actually DPS, Denver Public Schools, has a Black Excellence Plan. Yes. And in this plan, every school is supposed to be talking about what we can do to address what's happening to the Black community, stop the achievement gap, help our kids to grow and love themselves, etc. So as we're having the conversation, this white woman, actually we get put in breakout rooms. Mm-hmm. I get put into a breakout room with 2 white women, 3 Mexican women, and this one white woman asks me, Michael, have you ever experienced racism? And I'm like, well, you know me. You know,
man, you answered her. You answered.
So yeah, I gave her the answer. Yeah, yes, of course I have experienced racism. I even experienced racism at the school last year. And then we eventually went back. Then we went to lunch. While we're at lunch, I get a message for a meeting from my principal asking for a meeting because she talked to the people that were in my group and she felt like what I said wasn't professional. Then in our meeting, she asked me what I said, and I say the same thing. And I literally said her name. I talked about the racism that I experienced and how you contributed to this racism being at your school. So she says that wasn't professional and she's going to put me on suspension.
It wasn't professional, you explaining your experiences with racism in her school.
Exactly.
When someone, and not even just volunteering, someone asked you the question. It was
in a year where the district is saying we are having a Black Excellence Plan, which, and I've always taken, it doesn't just mean Black excellence for students, because I think we know Black excellence for students means Black excellence for educators. And you were advocating and challenging those historical examples of oppression that existed even in your school building.
Yeah, Kevin, you'll actually laugh at this. There's this trash superintendent that used to have this quote, better me, better we.
Yes, I remember that. I used to quote that all the time.
That is like, he did not do his job in my opinion.
Yes.
But I agree with that quote. If I'm a better teacher, then my kids are going to be better.
That's exactly
right. Yes.
We're going to learn. We're going to all thrive. But apparently DPS wasn't quite ready to make a better me. And I was eventually let out. But it was just, the whole year was just a lot of that. A lot of microaggressions, stereotyping, racial, just microaggressions telling me that the way that I talk isn't professional. Just, am I being, just a lot of respectability politics.
Yes.
Like I said, my refusal to assimilate. Now, for those that are listening, I would never do anything to put my students, well, actually I can't say that because I did get let go of the school, but I would not do anything in the classroom to put my kids in a bad place. What I did do to put my kids in a bad place was standing up for myself, and that led me being kicked out of the school early. But I am devoted to my kids' success, and the way that I teach is, I think, professional. The way that I handle myself in community, with my parents, with my students, even with my leadership at the school, is professional in my opinion, but they didn't agree. And it was just a year of that, to a point where I eventually asked them for restorative conversations. I asked for restorative conversations with my principal, other school leadership, many of them, even the teacher at the beginning of the year that reported me for saying my story of experienced racism. I asked for a restorative conversation with her as well, and I was refused for the conversation.
Huh.
When I did get a restorative conversation with the principal, it was really just a game of one of the principal's friends acting like they were doing what they needed to, but not wanting to follow the rules.
To check a box. Like we went through the restorative conversation. The conversation wasn't fruitful. It didn't manifest anything. It was just like a conversation, like, we got to do this.
Yeah, exactly. There was no real hope in the conversation. It was just checking the box to say that they did it. So we did the restorative conversation. We ended up ending the restorative conversation early because she wouldn't even abide by the protocol that her friend had put for the restorative conversation. So even that ended up happening. Just a lot of that type of thing. I was a remote teacher because of the pandemic. So I needed to work with my coach to get my students supplies. There were multiple times where my coach would either lie on my students, say they had the supplies, or say that he had talked to them. And then when I'm advocating for my kids, it's once again just saying that I'm not professional. And that is just, those continued stories are just what led me to wondering, what else can I do? I played by the rules. I talked to my principal's boss. I asked them to step in and help. I talked about the toxic environment that is at my school with other leaders at the school, but because of the culture that is set up, people really aren't ready to be accountable. And you can't force people to be accountable. They have to be accountable on their own. So it just led me to a point of disheartening. I guess I was just disheartened and demoralized to feel that this wasn't the place for me, and not understanding that there would be a place for me. But actually, to bring it to the end, at the end of my school year, my principal scheduled my end of the year meeting on April 30th. And actually because I wasn't going to get the permission, I wasn't going to get support from my union in this meeting, I decided that I didn't want to go to this meeting.
Yep.
I knew that it was going to be harmful for me. So I took the half day, and they ended up having the end of the year meeting without me.
They had the meeting without you.
Yes.
And gave you a rating and did all of that nonsense. I'm sorry, all of the process without you.
Exactly.
Freudian slip.
I ended up that I was finding out that I was fired from my families. The end of the school day came, and they sent a robocall to all of my students' families saying that they would be in new classrooms. So I've got parents and students calling me in tears because we didn't get to say goodbye. And so I've now got to talk to the kids about all the
why you're not going to be there next year.
Why I'm not going to be there, but why they're still going to be successful even without me being there.
Because you're you're a amazing teacher, right?
That's what I like to think, but my school leadership didn't think that. They early non-renewed me. And so now I'm in the place where I can't get a new teaching job because the reference from my principal is stopping that. I've had schools that want to hire me. I've gone through interviews. They've even created positions for me. But when they talk to the principal, the way that the system works, without her go ahead, they can't hire me. And so I'm now starting to think about looking in other districts, but
But that involves moving or like commuting in further ways and all of this other stuff. You know, and I think for our listeners to understand, in our district, it does work that way, that like they have to contact the previous principal, right? And so the previous principal is you know, for no better term, shitting on you, right? Like over and over to everybody. Michael, like this is why your story is upsetting, you know, because you know, even down to the end where you say, you know, I'm going to explain to my students not why I'm not going to be here, but why they're still going to be scholars, right? And this is why, like, we need educators like you. So what are you doing now, right? So I know that you're in the process of seeing what you can find, but Well, what is it? What are you thinking about? I think one of the beautiful things about this podcast that me and Asia have found out is that there is a world of education outside of the traditional classroom. So what are your thoughts about like where you might be headed and where you've been spending your time right now? Just tell us about that.
Ooh, I'm all over the place. As you were thinking that, I was thinking of what part to tell you. But so I'll start with the part that for me at first didn't feel like it had anything to do with education. But I'm formerly incarcerated for marijuana possession. I have a felony for marijuana possession. Now, some recent legislation has changed in Colorado, and it's given me the opportunity to be a social equity delivery driver.
Yes.
So I'm starting a cannabis delivery service. And
yes,
very good.
That had nothing to do with teaching, but I realized that teaching was preparing me for so many other things. My ability to manage, my ability to calculate and do data, my ability to organize. So that is one spot where I didn't think my teaching was going to do anything, but I am pursuing this weed delivery service. And
yes.
That'll be one avenue, but I'm also trying my best to stay in education however I can. Education is my heart. So with Black Lives Matter 5280, we started a freedom school. We're going on our 5th summer. It starts next week. Yes. 2 weeks of teaching kids Black love, teaching them the Black Lives Matter principles and how they can love on themselves by using those principles. Because we know that we can't teach that type of stuff in school. A lot of the things like centering Black LGBT community, that doesn't really tie to academic standards. When we talk about valuing Black families and Black villages, it's a little harder to tie that into academic standards. But when our kids are able to tap into the things that we've been detached from, is so much more fruitful for their success. So Freedom School is something that I'm working on, thinking about going back to school, maybe getting my master's, a couple friends getting their doctorate. Thank you for that inspiration, Asia.
No problem.
Gerardo.
But I consider myself a lifelong learner. So any avenue that I can learn and pass on to this education world, I plan to do it. Whether that's volunteering in my community, maybe I'll be lucky and back in the classroom. Also, I've got 2 babies that I've got to raise.
That's it.
Lots of work on them is definitely a part of my work.
Yes. And so you said the 5280 Freedom School starts next week. Can people still sign up for that?
Yes. Yep.
What
am I talking about?
Spot taken.
It is waitlisted.
Yes.
No, I will tell you.
Is finished. We've got a wait list.
They wait for 2022. They looking for.
Yes, 2022. Black Lives Matter 5280 Freedom School will be happening in the summer. And then 2023, I believe, we're starting a year-long school.
That's what's up.
So
that's what we need. That's what we need.
Kevin, don't forget, this recording will come out in like September, so they can't sign up anyway.
Oh, good point. Thank you, Asia. I told y'all I've had a month off, so I don't even know what time it is.
So yes, by the time you all hear this, the Black Lives Matter 5280 Freedom School will be successful. Our kids will be back in school and loving and fighting for all of us.
That's what's up.
I do have one more question. You're going in that direction with like when all this is happening and now when the school year started, how did community and family support you and help you or not? Maybe I don't want to make an assumption, but I assume they did support you through all of this as you were trying to figure all these pieces out.
Yeah, like without my family and community, I would have given up already. Actually, in my first years of teaching, I was already asking people, how is this sustainable? That is usually my first question whenever I'm talking to other educators of how do we make this education thing sustainable? Because from the beginning, I've had questions of how this is even happening and how we can let it continue to happen. But so luckily, I've got a community of teachers, educators, both current and former, and I've got a family that believes in me. And folks just are able to coach me through those moments where I just feel like everything's on fire and what am I going to do? I'm talking to Asia about how did you go through this? How can I navigate this a little bit better? Talking to Kevin Gerardo about what can we do to create the space for educators like us so that we're not getting kicked out. What have y'all done? And really just trying to support the work that's already been there. But even my family, I'm the first to go to college. I take education a little more seriously than the rest of them.
That's right.
And still, when I'm like, yo, I don't know if I can do this, they're like, what do you mean? All that you overcame? What is this? What is leadership at a school bullying you compared to the other forms of bullying that you've experienced in life? You didn't take it from the police. What makes you taking it from these folks?
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that has been tough for me, telling my family that it might be time for me to step away and show up in a different way, because my family, they look at teachers as heroes in a way. My family wasn't encouraging me to be a teacher early on, but now that I am a teacher, there is really not a higher honor that I could have besides being an amazing father. So for me, telling my family that it might be time for me stepping away from the classroom has been tough at times, but luckily, I've just got so many people that I can lean on and get advice from. Really just figure ideas out. There are teachers that I'm leaning on to get business advice from.
Yes.
So,
Yes. I love that point about, and I'm sorry, Asia, for jumping in, but just, ahead. I love the point about your family and what it means to be an educator. I think in the Black community, there is, there is a status to it, right? There is a status and that there is honor, that you just carry in your family, and it is. And I think when I think about because I think this, Michael and Asia, as a Black educator, you go through it all the time, being like, is today to take a quote from, is the Lord talking to me today? Is today it? But I think, we all go through that and we all have those questions. And I think it goes back to the fact that for us, and I know I'm probably biased on this, but I think education, it just means more when we go into the classroom as Black educators. It just really, it's not just a job. It's not just something we choose to do. It's over and over. There is, like you've described, Michael, there's a mission. There is a catalyst moment. There is a family member, a community member that you are thinking about when you interact with the kids. And I think that's part of the difference, and I think it's why it's critical that we have Black educators and brown educators in the classroom. It's critical, and Black males and brown males in the classroom. But so I think, go ahead, Asia. You were to say something, then I'll follow up with.
Michael can go first.
Actually, you just made me think of something. I was just talking to a friend about that. Black educators, so oftentimes, they want us to be the disciplinarians. They want us to be, especially Black men, I often seen getting pushed to behavior dean or those type of things. And they're not in the classroom in the way of a classroom teacher. While I get it, we do need behavior deans. And actually, something I meant to talk about earlier, I don't know if a lot of these people know what happens in our real communities, in our homes.
How we discipline. How does discipline really work in a Black house?
Because some of the things that I will see happening to Black and brown kids in our schools are just not okay.
Not
on both spectrums of either people are just brutalizing them, that I wonder if these people really know our communities and what people would say if they seen the way that they were treating our kids. People really just oppressing our kids, breaking them down, taking all hope from them, or just allowing them to do things that are not going to lead them towards success. building bad habits, and then it just creates a world of a problem. So I forgot where I was going, but yeah, just Black educators, the box that they often try to put us in, and really trying to hold the space as a teacher, a classroom teacher, is something that I really value. And actually today I had a meeting with our Ethnic Minorities Affairs Council, which is educators of color. And I drove away from that meeting sad because it's a community that I may be stepping away from in the near future if I'm no longer a classroom teacher, but also hopeful because there are so many radical revolutionary teachers like me that are still in that space. So to all my EMAC family, y'all give me hope. I know I've told y'all before, but keep it going for real. Y'all give me hope.
That's it. That's it. No, that's an important thing to really point out. That's an important thing to point out.
So maybe it's not like the exit interview for the end of your teaching career, right? Maybe it's just like
it's the pause interview.
It's a pause. It's a pause interview in like exiting that particular school and perhaps that particular district. But it's just like that pause and a chance for folks to hear during that pause, like what is going on in our spaces, how our teachers are needing to be heard, how our students are being treated, right? And so that we can't have this like both conversation of like, we're going to have this Black excellence plan and we're going to treat our teachers like crap. And then they can't be done. So yeah, I really appreciate that. Like, yeah, I'm not done. Right. And that gives, I'm sure, so many folks out there hope that like, yeah, it's okay to pause, do something else, come back to it, and just be like ready when the time is right. That's really important to think about, to talk about.
Yeah.
Did the producer jump in for a second?
Jump in, producer.
Yeah, what's up? It's producer.
Mystery voice.
I'm like my camera's not working right now, so that's just how that is. Yeah, I think one of the things that really occurred to me today on the way over to the EMAC gathering, Michael, is how much there's just a lot of feelings that I've kind of had, and I don't typically make an appearance on Exit Interview, but you're somebody that I love dearly and who's just been really important to me personally. And I know the same can be said for Kevin and Asia here. But, the first thing for me is this is kind of what happens when we don't stand in solidarity with others. What happens is that those who do stand up and do push hard take all the fire. And it's like, this is just that call that all of us, in EMAC and all the caucuses and councils that we're a part of, we're going to have to open up our eyes to and realize that we can't let another Black teacher keep taking this fire. Like, we have to be there to absorb as well. And so I think about that a lot. I think about how this work with brother, there isn't a caucus that you're not a member of and a founding member of. And I think that's
true. Very true.
Yeah, you've ignited something in folks that maybe was already there, but that they're willing to kind of
organized it.
I mean, you talk about, you and I had a conversation about organizing today and how crucial it is that we not just act in our own spheres of influence, our own little bubbles, and we organize. And, there's just something that I want to point out. I'm aware of a white male teacher in the state of Colorado who threatened to bring his gun to school and take care of the teachers he didn't like. And that man's an award-winning teacher in this state. And in the meantime, yeah, I mean, I don't have to explain why, right? And in the meantime,
I'm sure the story's out there. People get on the internet. I'm sure they find it out.
Oh yeah, y'all can find it. And at the same time, we have Black educators who are being tone policed and run out of the profession, despite sterling records with kids, because they are not minding their place. And that's upsetting. You and I were talking about disappointment, Michael, and how like the bar was already really low, and yet we are still disappointed. Like this whole field could not make the minimum, and it's just really intense. And so I just wanted to interrupt this conversation and just, let you know how much love I and my partner have for you. And, whatever we got to do to get you back with kids, that we're willing to do.
Yeah. If we'll post the resume, like, I don't know what teachers are doing. Like, it's like LeBron James is a free agent. So,
Yeah.
Like, what are y'all doing? What are y'all doing? Don't believe. I'm tired of these rumors. Keep hearing them every day.
I cannot with you today.
Sometime to get
away.
Wow.
I will say, like, I'm with that. And at the same time, the school has to be deserving.
That's right.
Right? Because it's one thing I know, and we've had this conversation with lots of folks on our podcast about, like, the principal was dope, and then the principal left.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so it's like we say, yeah, we got your interview or blah blah blah, and then the principal or whoever that team was or that crew was that made it dope.
Splits up.
They split up. They retired. Whatever. And then you're right back. Right. And so, yeah,
rebuild it.
And it's like, how do we make it sustainable? Right? How do we keep that harm from happening where people are at home crying, people are at home in literal physical pain, right? Because in the end, that's a lot to go through, right? Yeah, we all love our students. Yeah, we all want to see our students succeed, but at the risk of our own health and well-being. And we know, like, lots of folks on our podcast have come in and said, like, they were hysterical, been hospitalized, panic attacks, lots of things going on because they just want to do right by kids, right? And so, like, how do we have a conversation of, it can't just be that we follow the administrators around.
That's right.
Or the team is a perfect team this year, but then somebody goes to a different school or has a baby and goes somewhere else, and now we're starting from scratch, because that's just so frustrating, right? So I'm with it. And there's another conversation, obviously, that needs to be had about, like, all these other pieces.
I love that point, Asia. So I think it leads to my next question to Michael Michael, if you were, brought in as a consultant, right? Because we think that if you do leave education, you should be a consultant, because that's where you can make money, because you're an expert, as Asia will point out. But what would you consult, principals, up and coming veteran administrators? Like, what would you tell them? How do we make sure that we don't reenact your story? How do we make sure we keep Black educators in the classroom? What do we have to do?
I think, principals wouldn't have power over this, but we need to pay educators more, for real. People don't talk about that enough. So that's one of the things, especially educators of color. Our families are not encouraging us to live a life of poverty in a quote unquote professional field. So I think paying them more, but something that principals can actually do is work on communication. That gap between admin and teachers does not need to be there. Most admin have been teachers at some point, but I feel like folks can forget about that. And then it seems like admin start to behave in ways that they forgot the way they were when they were a teacher.
Yep.
And so they've got to communicate with teachers to figure out where is that breakdown happening. And really support teachers in a way that aren't making them feel targeted. Like, another story of my year this year, I went to my principal because my coach wasn't supporting me.
Yep.
And then my principal used that as an opportunity to put me on an improvement plan that wasn't supporting me. It wasn't helping any of the things that I asked for support with. In fact, it was things that I was already doing, but it only supported her narrative that I wasn't a good teacher by putting me on a plan.
Yep.
It was just political games. I know that principals tend to lose autonomy when they take that role. So I kind of get it, but we can't make excuses when our kids are failing.
That's
when
right.
Our teachers are getting burnt out.
That's right.
And I think that's a really important point. Really important point.
Well, This seems like this was another fantastic episode, Kev. Yeah, and I know we could talk all night, but we don't have all night.
We could, because we can get into all the stuff. There's so much that we could talk about, like we go.
Yeah. And I want maybe Michael can come back in one of our episodes in season 2 to say, like, this is what I'm doing, this is where I am right now. And I'd love to see that. But yeah, this has been another great episode. And I want to thank you, Michael. I know I've known Michael since like BLM days when I was starting in BLM, and I was like, oh my God, he's so dope, and just like, yeah, I appreciate you. I appreciate you sharing your story. You're good people, right? You're good people. And so, yeah, we just want to thank you. Kev, anything?
I mean, I just echo Asia, we go back. I still remember we had lunch at Pizzeria Locale. Remember that, Mike? Me, you, and Gerardo.
I'll never forget that.
Back in the day.
That was good times. That was good times.
But I'm like I said, this episode is bittersweet, but like, I think Asia's right. We got to have a part 2. We need to follow up. This will keep the people kind of wondering, like what happened with Mike? Because like, you are truly an educator. Like, when I think about like what I'm doing in my classroom, I you are one of the people who I'm, like, we hip hop generation, right? So like, I'm always competing with my people, right? Like, so like, if you're doing special stuff in elementary, I got to be doing special stuff in middle school. Gerardo's doing special stuff at high school. Asia's doing special stuff over at Cherry Creek. I'm hearing what everybody's doing. And so like, I'm just competing to try to stay up. And I've always felt like that with you. And, you've inspired me on the organizing tip, on the pedagogical tip, just on the manhood tip, and so I just love you, and I'm thankful that you flowed through.
Likewise. Thank y'all for inviting me. Thank you for having me. And same, I still think about that time at Pizzeria Locale. Y'all were my inspiration. I'm like, how do I get to be like teachers in Asia? That's literally why I wanted to recruit you into the movement, because you're so dope. So, y'all gonna keep doing good work, and any way I can support it, I'm here.
That's what's up.
All right, well, that's the end of episode 10. We appreciate
Franz is
y'all.
giving his last shout out.
Thanks, Franz. Love y'all. Peace.